By the way, either of you tired this morning? I'm a little tired.
Tired. What's
that? Sleep when you're dead?
You can sleep when you're dead. Good morning, guys. We're back. We did our first pop-up huddle last night. Got a good turnout.
Got a great turnout.
Yeah.
We're 5 million right now, the way I'm looking at it.
5 million. Maybe someday. Yeah, so we talked a lot about the president's speech last night. We'll talk about it a little bit this morning, but obviously we were up late, so forgive us if we stumble over our words and drag it a little bit. We've got a lot to get through, so let me just sort of, get started. We'll pull up the agenda here. We're going to talk about the president's speech, which I think a lot of people believe was a bit of a dud. Johnson losing control of the House, the Speaker of the House, sort of losing members who are working with Democrats on Obamacare subsidies. Now, at least Stefanik is now using her microphone to start to question what's going on at Brown. A lot of talk about this on the right now, so we'll dig into that. Putin posturing, the Russian dictator, sort of sending a warning sign, I guess you would say, to Europeans and the Americans right now about this emerging peace plan. The Department of Justice has a new Antifa plan to go after folks who are rioting and violence on the left. And then we'll talk 2028 with a little bit of buzz with Ted Cruz and AOC. But first, the day book. Any minute now, we're going to see November's consumer price index that's going to be released here right now at some point.
Yeah, I'm checking. Keep going.
Yeah, and this is going to give us an idea of where inflation is. We haven't seen inflation numbers, I think, since September, guys. It sounds like folks are expecting things to be around, 3%, which is where we started.
2.7. Yep, it just came out.
2.7.
2.7, so slightly lower than the
slightly lower.
Okay. That's a very good number. I can dance to that.
Yeah.
We've got the House. Go ahead, Dan.
No, I was gonna say could be worse. Yeah.
Are you kidding? I mean, come on.
Going in the right direction.
It's 2.7. The analysis was it could tick down to 2.9 or up to 3.1. 2.7 is a great number.
Victory lap for the White House.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see what the expectation was. Yep.
I think the expectation was that it would stay at 3.
Sean is right. According to CNBC and the Dow Jones polled economists, the prediction was it would rise from 3 to 3.1, but it went to 2.7. So you're right, Sean, that the White House will feel good about this today. Yep.
Absolutely.
We all will feel good about this today.
Correct.
That's right. It's all of our pocketbooks. So the House's last day is today. They're going to break for the holiday break. Let's see, in a few hours here. I just call this out because they canceled votes tomorrow very conveniently on a day that is the deadline for the Epstein files to come out. So that's going to be a big thing tomorrow, flagging for everyone. DOJ has to release everything by the end of tomorrow. And then on Capitol Hill, we have Hakeem Jeffries and the Democratic Caucus. They're going to be having a press conference today. I'm sure they'll talk healthcare. 11 o'clock, the president is receiving his intelligence briefing. Also at 11, HHS Secretary RFK is going to be having a news conference to, quote, announce actions to protect children from harmful medical interventions. That seems like it's going to grab a lot of headlines, guys. I'm also curious if people will ask him about Olivia Nuzzi, but that's just me.
How could you not?
Nobody has, Sean.
Well, they tried, but they did that when they did that pull-up thing at the airport, but then they were like, we got to go. This one's a little harder.
Nobody's asked about it at a press conference, White House press conference either. I'm just very, very surprised on that.
By the way, just a quick thing, Sean, this will cheer you, the White House, and all of us, as Rachel would say. The quick instant reaction on the inflation also is this makes rate cuts in January more likely, because if inflation is slowing, they'll focus more on the slowdown in jobs. So you could see more and or bigger rate cuts. So just something to flag for people. Yep.
Interesting. Maybe Powell will be back on the president's good side, but
maybe
I wouldn't bet on that.
Sean, he's right about everything.
No, look, this just bought Powell another month.
Yeah.
Because every time he has it, there's less of an impetus to fire him. But I also think it hurts Kevin Hassett. I know this wasn't what we were going to talk about, but I've said this before. Time is his enemy right now. Hassett is the front runner, but the people who are taking him down, the more time they have to throw out oppo or
Or
negative.
float new candidates, right?
Yeah.
1:30, the president's going to be signing an executive order. I think we expect this to be the
Marijuana.
reclassification of marijuana.
Yeah.
4:15, the president participates in a Christmas reception at the White House. 6 p.m., he's signing the National Defense Reauthorization. 8:15, the First Lady, Melania Trump, will participate in a Christmas reception. Just flagging that officially, Don Bongino has become
Dan.
I'm Dan Bongino. I'm sorry. It's the lack of sleep. Dan Bongino has officially become the first big, Trump nominee or Trump appointee who is out. We got news last night that he is going to be moving on. And if you guys watched the show, we brought this up last week, brought it up again earlier this week. I haven't seen any credit on MSNBC who wrote this story yesterday. I will be
Remember,
out.
there's an E in Rachel,
Hello.
right? Right. There's an extra A. Just when you spell her name, get it right, please.
Yes. And also in the news today, America Fest, Turning Points USA's annual conference, begins today. And obviously, this is going to be a big thing people watch this weekend because of, well, first of all, this is going to be their first big conference without their fearless leader, Charlie Kirk. But also, there's a lot of divisions about sort of where the group is going. There's the Candace Owens thing that's still hanging out there. Sean, like, what are you watching for on this? Like, how big of a moment is it for the group?
I think the group itself has a moment because, to your point, there's just institutionally, how are they carrying forward under Erica's leadership? And I think they'll do just fine on that front. But secondly, also, you've got a lot of interesting voices up there, from Tucker Carlson to Steve Bannon. What is the focus? We can get to this a little later, but also, like, is there division? And so I will watch, because Charlie encouraged that. And that was the thing that's so funny. You would have these conversations where you'd hear about these conversations that Charlie had, where somebody'd say, "Oh, I'm not sure I want to do this because Charlie, I'm going to say X." And he'd say, "Great," even more so. Like, he welcomed it. I think that's the beauty of this, is that, like, let's have it out. Let's talk about it. But I think the context in which it happens, do speakers get up there and kind of try to create controversy, say, if this is the right move or not, versus just espouse sort of their view and try to win people over. So the tone will matter to me.
And just to flag for folks, it looks like that sort of attempt at a détente between Erica Kirk and Candace Owens didn't go as planned. Candace is out there, talking about conspiracy theories again. So that's going to obviously be in the blood for this. Okay, let's get to some of these topics. We talked about it last night on the show, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. But President Trump giving his address last night, a lot of people, including Republicans, kind of asking, what was this, right? The president is nothing but, if not like, entertaining. And yet yesterday's speech, he was talking very quickly. It was an 18-minute speech. He seemed upset. He seemed angry at times. And more specifically, there wasn't a big announcement, with the exception of a small thing, which we'll talk about with the additional money for service members. There wasn't a big rollout for 2026. Nothing, like, no new big proposals to announce. Sean, like, what would you how would you grade the president's speech last night? And I mean, you talked about it a little bit on your show, but it seems like you felt his heart wasn't really in it.
No, I felt like, more than anything, I felt it was rushed. And President Trump knows how to give a speech and own a room better than anybody. And I felt like it was, all right, I have to do this versus I want to do this.
Which is what it's reported that he told the people behind the stage was, Susie told me to do this. Literally, right, is what he's reported to have said.
And conversely, that, we could get it done in under X minutes, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And she did. But again, I think this is one where if you read the speech, it will go over very well. Just sort of the recitation of what he has accomplished, which is a lot. I felt like the delivery was rushed, and that sort of shocked me, in the sense that that's the one thing, we always talk about what someone can do as a politician. You can't force them to do something they're not good at. Donald Trump gives a speech really well. And so last night, I think I felt like he was rushing through it, trying to get all of the boxes checked. And there were lines that I was like, wait, highlight that more, go to that. Like, you did it. You actually accomplished so many things that you've said you were doing. But look, they will have it out there. They can clip it around. They can send it. It did what it needed to do. He was clearly like on focus with what I've accomplished. I'm with you as well. Like I didn't feel like here's the piece of this. When you do a State of the Union, right? It's you a lot more props, if you will, in terms of stories and anecdotes and what's going on and blah, blah, blah. But you also have a really big rollout. Like you do pre-briefs, you do post-briefs, you get surrogates out there. I didn't feel like a lot of the components were there for that.
Right. Yeah, I just feel like if you're going to ask people to sort of tune in during prime time at 9 o'clock at night to watch an address like this, it's got to have some bells and whistles, and it just didn't feel like it had that. One thing he didn't.
I will say that logistically, like we joked about this, but seriously, if he had held this in the East Room of the State Dining Room and had some people and said, "Hey, like a State of the Union, there's some folks here tonight that I know, blah blah blah." And I say this in all seriousness because you have to understand there's Hanukkah and Christmas parties all week long. They're limited in what they can do in that context because the State Dining Room's got all the tables out in the East Room, et cetera. So I feel like, again, this was sort of round peg in a square hole. Like, let's get it done and maybe not have had all of the logistical aspects that you could have maximized.
Well, the thing is, they didn't have to do it at the White House. So that was their choice. But I think the thing is, there's no narrative that came out of this other than Trump's putting all the chips into everything I've done is going to work.
Yeah.
Right. That is your big, like when I scanned the headlines today, it was either he blames Biden. That was the left's headlines, basically. And kind of like, this is tiring and doesn't really hold anymore. Or on the right, it was
the warrior bonus.
Yeah. The warrior bonus and like things are on the verge of happening. Like the good times are almost here. Like they're going to come. If you're on the Hill, like, you're nervous because now what you're saying is our biggest microphone, the top of the ticket, his message is you're all going to say it is on the precipice of happening here. And if he's right, he's going to really be right because it is Winston Churchill in the darkest moment. I didn't flinch and I told you and I made these bets and I knew it was going to work. And if not, you look tone deaf. And so no guts, no glory.
Two quick things. I asked Rachel last night, if you were still at Politico, like what would you frame this as? And what did Politico lead with this morning? Themselves. They left with, hey, our print edition. I mean, like they didn't even lead with the speech. They left with themselves and how their print edition is no longer, as if anyone read the
I told you, I was like, it would be hard to make this into a
but
top.
again, that says a lot when you're like, hey, instead of the president addressing the nation, we're going to focus on our print edition being.
But when I looked at the headlines this morning, there were literally like 15 different headlines and 15 different websites.
Let me just say this lastly, because Dan, I think you're right. I've said this before. Tell me what the economy is in July, August next year, and that's the answer. And so to me last night is I saw him push the chips over and say everything's on red. Because that's, and you had, and to your point about being nervous, here's the deal. That's all that matters. If this economy is booming, which I think between the investment and all the stuff that he's done, he's making the right bet. He has nowhere else to go. You're not going to bet against yourself. The president last night bet on himself and what he has set out to do the last 11 months that will come to fruition.
Well,
that was the right bet, and it's the only bet.
Well, the only other thing you could do is say, here are all the things I've done, and here are a few more that are going to help, but we'll see.
And by the way, guys, he didn't call affordability a hoax, which in and of itself, I think is it's a win for the White House because they got to get him off that talking point. Okay, let's move on. Speaker Johnson losing control of the House. So Obamacare premium subsidies are going to expire in a couple of days, go up on 20 million Americans. We had 4 moderate House Republicans join Democrats yesterday, signing on to a discharge petition. This tees up a vote next year. It basically goes around the speaker and forces a vote to extend the subsidies for 3 years. And this is just a clean extension without any sort of reforms. And these moderates, Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, Mike Lawler, New York, Rob Bresnahan of Pennsylvania, and Ryan McKenzie of also of Pennsylvania. These guys say they did it because they couldn't even get an amendment to vote on. And they wanted that obviously for their reelections and to tell their constituents that they're working on this. I saw a stat online that this is obviously the 4th discharge petition this year to actually go through and be executed. This is like so rare. The last time we saw this happen, where there were 4 discharge petitions in Congress, was in the 75th Congress, which was between 1937 and 1939. This is rare. Like it rarely, it just doesn't happen. To have 1, let alone 4, really shows you that the speaker is losing power, Sean. Like, is there anything he can do to sort of like corral his members and get his mojo back here? Or at this point, is it just, try to staunch the bleeding as much as you can?
So I have an interesting theory that I want to just float out and get on the record. A discharge petition requires that the House take up that piece, that legislation within 7 legislative days. House is out. They're not coming back till January. So whether today counts or not, I could ask the parliamentarian, but the bottom line is he bought himself some time.
Yeah.
The speaker is constantly having to play a game of chess among a bunch of disparate interests in the conference. Okay. So here's my theory that I came up with last night. Johnson knows that these 4, and it's not just 4. You've got Jen Kiggins in Tidewater, Hampton Roads area of Virginia 2, that's got a tough race. You've got some guys in California, Kevin Kiley, that might care. But Johnson knows that he knows that the conservatives, the Freedom Caucus, was like, hell no, we will not touch it. We will not even. Okay. So what if Johnson said, go ahead, sign the petition. And now I can go back to the Freedom Caucus and say, guys, this is going to pass. This will happen. 3-year extension. It'll go to the Senate. Or, we go back to, here's how we can land the plane. I could sprinkle in a little of what they want. We take out fraud. So what, in other words, he has to figure out constantly how to get these disparate interests to realize a bigger and greater good. And so my thought last night was, it's not like Johnson and his team didn't know this was going to happen, right? Or that there was a possibility. They didn't even offer them the amendment. Was that a way to show the Freedom Caucus, all right, guys, I did it your way. Now we need to do it my way. And I as I've said before, I don't think the White House has been playing this, I think, politically beautiful, because the House in particular sometimes needs to go through the machinations of recognizing, we tried it your way, that didn't work. We tried it this way, that's not going to work. Here is the right porridge that is the right temperature, right? And that was too hot, that was too cold, this one's just right.
I'm skeptical, Sean, and the reason is I just don't think the speaker wants anything to do with extending these subsidies at all. Like, I just think, I could be wrong. I think the White House is in a different place on this. I totally agree with you on this. I mean, there was a lot of framing of this yesterday on MSNBC and sort of Democratic leaning or left leaning, TV networks, that it was a loss for the president. And I was like, that's not true at all. Like, they're not out there telling people not to sign on. If anything, they floated a plan extending these subsidies. So it's definitely not a lost person. It's hard. It could be a 3D game of chess. You're right.
We're getting wrapped around the Beltway axis here of process and insight, knowing that 99% of the country doesn't follow it like this. I totally disagree, guys. Anytime you're divided, anytime the stories from Fox News to MS Now are all the same, Republicans are divided. Trump wants X. A renegade part in the House said Y, and our side is totally united. It is not a good day for you as a party, for your brand, for the issue, for solving the problem for the American people. You don't want to look like this. I hear you guys that, like, behind the scenes, you may, this goes back to the Obamacare shutdown, right? Boehner, like, well, let's let Cruz go march off the cliff. We'll all go off the cliff, say, I told you so, and here's what's going to be. But it's a killer. I think now, I will say, this is on the other side of the aisle. For the first time in 2 years, you are seeing stories of high fives for Hakeem Jeffries. He held the line on this. They did not get on I reported, because I was told by someone very senior, they thought about getting on one of these discharge petitions for a 1 or 2 year extension. Jeffries said, no, they're so divided. They're fighting so hard. Let them come to us. And it worked. And now the question is, do they end up working with the Senate? Does the Senate come over and say, you're never going to get 200 Republicans ever? So we're going to have to deal with the House Ds. So we'll see. But guys, a House divided is not good.
Look, I don't disagree with how the landscape looks. I'm with you. Like, it's not, you don't want this to happen, but the reality of having like a 2-seat majority. I mean, so I'm with you. Like, I don't disagree with the analysis. This is not good, but there's also a reality of when everyone gets to be. I mean, this is the funny thing is the House members are suddenly feeling like understanding what it feels like to be a senator. When you get to go, I object, and everything goes, well, what can I do to assuage you, Senator? These House members feel empowered because for the first time, instead of being told to go pound sand, we have enough votes to get it over the finish line. We don't care. Suddenly, a guy like Mike Lawler says, you want to see how much power I have? Watch this.
It's like Manchin and Cinema.
Let's we actually have an element I want to bring up. I should have brought it up at the top. Reporters asking Speaker Johnson if he's basically losing control of the conference, and let's take a look at his
in U.S. history. Okay, these are not normal times. There are processes and procedures in the House that are less frequently used when there are larger majorities, and when you have the luxury of having 10 or 15 people who disagree on something. You don't have to deal with it. But when you have a razor-thin margin, as we do, then all the procedures in the book people think are on the table, and that's the difference. So
the Speaker basically chalking that up to a math problem. We can jump out of
it. I mean, look, the thing is, you didn't have this when, hat tip to Nancy Pelosi. You did not. She had razor-thin majorities in both in under Biden, and you never saw this stuff. It's a House divided.
Yep. Let's move on to Elise Stefanik and these ongoing questions about what's going on at Brown University. A second element, let's pull up her tweet. It seems very clear to me that the president of Brown University will need to be hauled in front of Congress for a hearing under oath. Why do we flag this? Elise Stefanik obviously has a pretty incredible record of putting heads on spikes when it comes to
Ivy League
presidents. Yes. Okay. Went after the universities for not doing enough to crack down on anti-Semitism, brought them in front of the Hill, really used it to boost her profile. And guess what? She's running for governor of New York right now. So she's definitely going to lean into this. Sean, what are conservatives going to do here? I mean, this is percolating even more on the right now about how Brown is handling this and the local authorities.
Yeah. And the thing was interesting is there was more and more issues become tribal that never were in the past.
Yeah.
Right. And so it is amazing to see. And I mean this because Sheldon Whitehouse, one of the senators from Rhode Island, went out yesterday and say, how dare anybody question this? And he's very indignant. Right. And so you've got the Democrats saying, don't question what Brown and the Providence Police and the mayor, Smiley and the governor, McKee are doing. And it's amazing. And then the Republicans, but just on the merits of how this investigation is happening, it is unbelievable how now they went from 2 days ago, it finally became, we're looking for this individual based on thing. And now on local TV here, I don't know if it's playing as big nationally, there's a person of interest that may know the person of interest. And now I'm not kidding. We're focusing a guy on like a puffer jacket saying this person may know the other person. I mean, this is literally embarrassing. And I think as you dig through some of the questions and to say that a question isn't legitimate, right? Like there's questions about whether Brown has scrubbed its website of individuals that have been affiliated. There's questions about what they prioritized in their budget in terms of DEI. Those are legitimate questions. There are additional questions about how the investigation's being run in terms of what they were tracking, where the cameras were, that they're saying are off limits. I don't understand that. Where's the press saying, how dare you tell us what's off limits when a reporter asks about what happened and you're being told you may not ask a question? If this had been, again, this is why I think for a lot of us on the right, we're going, you got to be kidding me. Like, in the past, it's all of these concerns about how this was done, but there definitely is. And I think, Rachel, this is important to understand. Whether you agree or disagree, the way that these events handle for people on the right, as I brought up yesterday, how Ella Cook isn't being celebrated more. These are real feelings for people on the right to look at a situation and say, how is this being done? And how was if the situation had unfolded somewhere else, how would it be handled? Whether you agree or disagree, to not understand the feelings of the right and how they're happening as events like this unfold are crazy, because you have a liberal mayor, a liberal governor, and obviously a very, very progressive, far left, university, to not be able to examine it and question it, being told your questions aren't worth discussing, goes back to where we were a few years ago. And Elise is right.
Well,
I would think at some point, like locals are going to rise up on this too. Like they would think they would want answer. I mean, at what point or can the Fed at all step in here, Sean? Like
according to the law, the law now says that they Dan, you may know that. I think Obama signed it, where basically they have to request it.
Yeah, and I think
they're not requesting help. Like,
well, no, they are. I mean, I think there's two different things here.
They're the lead, though.
Yeah, there's the actual tracking who did this, and that is law enforcement and the mayor, the state, the federal government. And that there's a whole series of questions about like, what the heck are you doing? Then there's the Brown question. And I think, Sean, you raised exactly what I was going to say, which is whether it's universities or corporations, you now, when there's a crisis of anything, you now have to think about two audiences. You have to think about how does the right view this and what are their thoughts and their feelings and what is trending on the right, and then kind of the mainstream side. And what you saw or seeing in the Brown University president's statement is dismissal of the right and focus on that New York Times mainstream, basically implying that we should, about gun violence and guns are the problem. And look, I hear it. In my world, that rings true to people. But you have to think in a crisis now that there's a whole nother side of the country that if you don't speak to, they're going to rise up. They're going to say WTF. And people like Elise Stefanik, again, appropriately so, she's representing her side of the aisle a little bit, are going to call you in and say, you need to answer our questions. We're in the majority.
Also, look, when Brown publicly goes out and prioritizes DEI funding wise, as they faced questions, right? That was a decision they made. Okay. When a tragedy happens, and again, whether it's a school or an office building, we've seen, tragedies occur at office buildings the last couple of years in New York. I believe there was someone who came in and like you're, as the CEO or the president of a university, you now have to be accountable for those decisions. What did you prioritize? Did you have, additional enhanced security? What were employees, and at some point as a leader, knowing what you know now about the environment that our country lives in, whether it's office security, school security, government building security, you would be saying, where are the cameras? Where were the what was the response time, right? How long did it take? In Australia, they're talking about how long it took police to respond to Bondi Beach. Those are legitimate questions. And to be told, to Dan's point, you can't ask them. Or wait a second, how is that not applicable?
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep tracking this because this is just going to get bigger, I feel like, especially the longer they go without catching and apprehending someone. Let's move on to Putin posturing. The Wall Street Journal has a story that Vladimir Putin warned that Moscow would achieve its goals in Ukraine either through diplomacy or on the battlefield. And this obviously comes after the U.S. and Europe met with Ukrainian leaderships to try to hammer out this new framework. Another little bit from the story, Putin signaled on Wednesday that the Trump administration's push to clinch this peace deal hasn't changed their aims. Well, I just kind of said that, I guess. That includes absolutely not allowing Ukraine a permanent path into NATO, which that's not in the current framework at all. So I'm not sure how that impacts things. And then limiting the size of their military and exerting influence over the country's political future. Dan, when you see a story like this, is the first reaction that this is obviously a bad sign for peace talks, or how do you think this shakes things up?
No, I mean, I think there's two things to watch, which is, what Putin is saying. And today he has his annual media day where he holds his press conference, like end of the year press conference that I think once he went 8 hours. I mean, this is like
8
Putin's
hours.
Yes,
oh my gosh.
Putin's day. He sits there and he talks and
Let's not act like they're real questions.
I was just going to say. So the
vetted.
interesting thing is, I think people are watching. What does he say and what does he not say? Because the Russians are meeting this weekend with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff in Miami again. Putin has said we're going to achieve our aims on the battlefield or a deal. But notice he's not defining what that is. So the question I think to watch for is Putin going to try to soften the Russian people up that we're going to sign a deal and this is victory, right? As he defines it. Or is he defiant and says, basically, we're winning. There's no reason for us to give on a single thing. And then how does the Trump world react? You know, because the reality is they are beginning to win more and more on the battlefield. The front lines are moving, you know, in their direction. So I'm just really curious this weekend, you know, what he says or today and what he doesn't say.
I'm glad we're doing this on video because you can see my shocked face.
I
mean, I don't like, I get there's a lot. This is one of those situations where there's a lot of movement and no action.
Yeah.
I will show you the end of the movie real quick. Nothing happens. Putin is not going to, he is going to like just obfuscate to try to appease Trump. I like this, but then they change this. And Zelensky, frankly, is doing a little the same himself, trying to make sure that I want to stay in the game. I want to find a couple areas of agreement. But this isn't, I mean, look.
So, Sean, let me ask you that.
When is he going to crack the whip, right?
So Trump has the State of the Union coming up. If, let's say you're right, do they walk away here for like 6 months and basically say, look, there's like the third time that we've pushed as hard as we can. We've kind of, you know, the American public, like the momentum seems to be building. It's in the headline because at some point you risk looking bad. That like it's Groundhog's Day. I mean, Rachel, every time we talk about this, you're like, Jesus, there's nothing new here. Like, how many times have we seen this movie?
I'm a big skeptic.
When does Trump say?
You're asking what I think. Here's what I think. That's why what I'm saying is Putin will never, ever agree to anything. Full stop. Okay. He will play the game to say, look, okay. On the same token, and this gets to your question, why Zelensky bought in the other day and said, I can work with a few of these things is because he's trying to keep Trump in the game. Look, I'm trying. I'm doing what you've asked me to do. I'm trying to get to yes. But at the end of the day, the problem is there is no yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so I don't know. That's why Zelensky is like, keep me in, coach. Keep me in, coach. I'm trying. I don't know where, and that's going to be the answer to your question, Dan. When does Trump say, I've had it, I don't want, and I actually think at some point though, Trump keeps talking, I've gotten 8 done, I want to get this other war solved. He's going to basically just take it off the map, I believe, at some point and say, guys, you can't, I tried for 9, I'm 8 for 8, we didn't even play game 9. Like he's going to say, this was never my war. Yeah. I didn't get us into it. I kept us, you know, out of everything during my first term. This is Biden's. You can't put it on my score. You know how like, Dan, you know how sometimes like a pitcher comes in the game but depending on the outs, like it's their inning. Like Trump's like, this isn't my inning. He's like, I didn't start this inning. You did. I might have pitched the third out, but I don't want this inning on my card. So I just think that we're going to continue the dance and that's where it ends up.
The challenge is he's put so much political capital into it, you know, to say like, oh, this was never my war. You know, I tried. I mean, I guess he could do that, but why doesn't he like take the tact that Senate Republicans and a lot of more traditional Republicans want him to take and like play hardball with Putin? I know he started to at some point and then seemed to sort of backtrack on that.
Because his own party won't support it. Like the only thing you could really do is shove arms in, which is money. Like, to say here's the
Republican Party doesn't want to do that.
$100 billion arms package to let Putin know you're never moving this trench line. If anything, it may start moving back. We will be here as long as it takes. His own party, including his vice president, would be like, no.
Can I one more elephant in the room? And then I just again is Europe, right? These guys today are having a meeting about whether or not they're really. I am like the Trump is absolutely right. The idea that Europe is so good at telling us what to do. They refuse to do the most basic stuff. And here's the problem. Even on sanctions, when the Trump's been like, great, you go first, you stop buying his gas, you start sanctioning all this stuff. They go, well, you know, that would hurt us. They're very good at telling us what we should do and how we should spend our money. Until Europe stands up, stop looking at us.
Let's move on to the Justice Department's Antifa plan. So WAPO has a story this morning saying that the administration is jumpstarting an effort to root out what it sees as rampant left-wing domestic terrorism. This is there was a Thursday deadline, today a deadline that Attorney General Pam Bondi set to put together these plans, draw up lists of Americans and foreigners to investigate in terms of what is very clearly a growing political threat. There is, Dan, some pushback on the left that this story gets into, with critics saying this is a crackdown on political dissent, under the banner of counterterrorism, that it's going to be used to round up liberal activists and chill First Amendment's rights. But Dan, I mean, the party's got to be careful on this too, because like while you obviously have a right to free speech, you don't have a right to make bombs in your house and dox people, and there's a limit to what you can do in terms of threatening people, rioting, etc.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is a fine line, because we've talked about this before. We go back to 2020 with some of the response to George Floyd, when it turned into rioting and looting and this kind of excuse of, well, they're angry, and some of this, what John Lewis would call good trouble, is okay, but the American people don't see it that way at all, nor should they, in my opinion. But I think where the left is kind of has their antenna up is, if you read that document from the DOJ, they talk about trying to find what one of the criteria is anti-Christian. I mean, that is like, okay, you can be anti-Christian in this country. It may not, I'm a Catholic, but I think the question has always been, is this really an effort to kind of try to intimidate parts of the Democratic Party that are active, to chill investment in democratic infrastructure? Or is it really focused on finding the true worst of the worst, and that do violence, which is unacceptable, and stopping that? So we'll have to see. But when you read that document about what the criteria are, anti-capitalism, like there are a lot of Democrats that would say taking investment stakes in Intel and other companies is anti-capitalism. So,
yeah, but it's not the position; it's how you act on the position, right? And
well,
that's what the DOJ, because we do
that
see
criteria. Then, if you said we're going to crack down on political violence, fine.
but that is what they're saying.
But no, it goes further than that. I mean, that's the thing that Democrats, like, they're looking at and saying, "Ooh, this is a very broad mandate."
Sean, we have seen, like, there's been a number of studies from nonpartisan sort of groups, universities, et cetera, that shows that violence on the left is rising and has surpassed, far right violence and extremism. I mean, like, just weigh in on this. Do you see any danger, I guess, in the DOJ going too far, as Dan is?
There's always a danger, but I think that for those, again, there's two things. One, leadership is what the real answer on a lot of the stuff is. Calling out stuff that's unacceptable. Stop allowing people to violently commit acts of vandalism and destruction in the name of free speech, right? And so I think that's it. Of course, there's always a danger. How they tackle it will matter, but like, I don't mean to sound like vengeance toward here, but for lots of us who have been silenced, canceled, debanked, etc. on the right, it's like, I'm sorry, like, you guys had your run. Trump's in town.
Yeah, it just seems like the protest on the left on this feels like a really slippery slope. But I get your point, Dan. Let's move on to 2028. Couple of fun, buzzy stories that tell us a little bit about where things are. Let's start with AOC. We have a element 4. We'll skip 3 for now. Go to 4. AOC is having some fun right
in a head-to-head race for president, as polling suggests, in 2028.
Listen, these polls, like 3 years out, are, they are what they are. But let the record show, I would stomp him.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Sorry, I should have teed that up first. There's new polling. Let's see, who's it by? Verisight poll that has AOC leading JD Vance, vice president, in a hypothetical matchup, 51% to 49%. She is having some fun with this. She retweeted it with one word, bloop. And then people found her outside the Capitol, and you see her fun little response to this. I mean, Dan, like what's your sort of take? We still don't even know if she has 2028 ambitions at this point, but she's clearly leaning into this to troll him and have fun with her followers.
Yeah, look, I'll say two things that I think are worth flagging. We often say that Gavin Newsom has had the best 2025 of any Democrat thinking of running for president. I would say that the second best has been AOC. If you just think about her position within the party, she did the No Oligarchs tour. Again, you can agree or disagree with that tour and what they're talking about and their point of view. But her stature, her profile as kind of the heir apparent to Bernie Sanders, as being a national figure, has continued to rise. And one of the things that do I think that she would beat JD Vance in a head-to-head? I personally do not. I know the betting markets feel, similarly for whatever, they're not worth very much. But what she showed yesterday was a nimbleness. And I've always said that she's a great political athlete. And she had some fun with it. She jumped on it, right? So what's one of the knocks for AOC? If I look on the chat, she never beat JD Vance. She's a liberal. She's a communist. She's a socialist. She put it out there. It was even talked about on Fox News. Oh, this poll, but it's not a real poll. Guess what? You're talking about me. It shows that I'm a real figure, that I maybe do have a national stature. That video was genius last night, right? You cut it. It's quick. It's instant. We talk about Trump's ability to produce content, to put out fun videos. His are more slick and stuff, but she's got game. And I don't know if she'll win our primary. I don't even know if she's going to run. She may run for governor or for, against Chuck Schumer or stay in the House. But she's got game and she's had a great 2025. There's no debating it.
Let's look on the other side of things. Ted Cruz making some waves. Clearly, he was not one of the 6 Senate Commerce Committee Republicans who met with the FCC chair before this hearing yesterday and said they're not interested in the Jimmy Kimmel issue, because he actually made the Jimmy Kimmel issue a huge deal yesterday, putting pressure on Brendan Carr to sort of back off when it comes to broadcasters. He chided him for threatening to pull Kimmel's show for those insensitive comments he made post Charlie Kirk assassination. And then he sort of raised even this prospect of getting rid of this power that the FCC has to sort of police broadcasters writ large. The headline there: Cruz threatens to disarm FCC over Jimmy Kimmel's suspension. Sean, this comes as Cruz, he's been doing a number of things that certainly look like a lot of 2028 positioning. He didn't chide the president for his comments about the Hollywood. Why is his name escaping me right now? Because
Jimmy Kimmel.
No, the guy who was just murdered by his son.
Oh, Rob Reiner.
Yeah, Rob Reiner. Sorry. He was out there tweeting his sympathies right after the president's post on Rob Reiner and clearly making a point that he was not taking a political dig at him. There's been a number of things like that. Do you think, what has changed? Everybody used to say, JD Vance, this is his to win. Now you're starting to see more people like Cruz make noise.
Yeah. And I think you'll see DeSantis make noise. There's a few others. The one thing, and we've talked about this a little in the way to, if you go back to when Clinton ran, right? People initially were like, well, I can't run. George Bush has a 92% approval rating. I think the lesson learned for both parties out of that was, hey, if you got a shot on goal, take it. And so whether you're Cruz or DeSantis, you never know, especially in Trump world. Who knows how things play out? So start getting in shape, do your things, separate yourself a little. Again, I'm not saying I'm a biggest fan of I'm not a big red on red guy, but separating yourself. This is, and also it's in Ted's wheelhouse. He is a First Amendment guy. He's a constitutional guy. So it's not like some foreign thing that you're like, how did he come up with this issue? So I get what he's doing. I will say this, just as a side note, not to get off, but I will say Brendan Carr held his own yesterday. And there was one moment where I cannot believe this happened, but one of the Democratic female senators tried to go after him saying, how come you haven't said anything on, she goes, yes or no, would you have banned this clip from Fox News? And he goes, no. And she goes, why? She goes, first of all, it was funny because I love the fact that he said, no, just didn't try it. And she said, see, that shows your bias. And he goes, ma'am, the FCC has no jurisdiction over Fox News or cable. And it was just it was just so brilliant. And so kudos.
But Mr. Zuckerberg, if you don't charge for the Facebook, how do you make money? Orrin Hatch is famous.
or Hank Johnson talking about, if you put the Marines on Guam, will it tilt over? There are some very good hearing moments that, but look, again, I don't think this is, I think people are looking for things too, Rachel. That's the thing. It's like, oh, look, Ted Cruz said this or DeSantis said this. These guys are testing the water. Is there an issue that I can own? Is there some separation that I can show? So, but I think, Brendan Carr,
I think it's worth watching though, because not only is he, as you say, this is who Ted Cruz is, but he's showing he's taken shots, showing some separation from Vance. don't forget, he pressed Vance on the anti-Semitism stuff, that you need to take a clear stand on Nick Fuentes. And we talked about Turning Point earlier. What you're starting to see is both on the commercial side of MAGA, where people are staking out different points of view about the conspiracies over Tucker's death or on Israel and anti-Semitism. Candidates are starting to stake out. You mentioned DeSantis. He is saying, no, federal AI preemption, forget it. Florida is moving forward with our own version of AI. All of this is just a little bit of Trump moving into being a lame duck, which is all the common theme in all of this: life after Trump.
Well, yeah,
and that with Trump, once that starts, it doesn't go back. It just only further exasperates the day after conversation, and it weakens him.
Look, Sean, you respond to the lame duck thing, because there's a lot of people saying that.
Thank you. I appreciate the gentleman yielding. I think there's two different things. In most people's mind, lame duck means I'm not as powerful. There is unequivocally no question that Donald Trump still has an iron grip on the movement and on the Republican Party.
Does he?
You are running for any,
Does he? Because Ted
absolutely, 100%. But to your point, and this is where I was going, there's also a reality, which is that he will not, in 3 years he will not be president, and therefore I have to find it's sort of like, the reality is, if you're a freshman in college, well, this used to be the case, at least it wasn't mine. My parents were like, you're done living at home. And so at some point you have to start thinking about what the future looks like. And so some of these folks are like, I need something that's my own. I need to figure out how two things can be true at once. Yes, he's
still powerful. I agree.
He's still powerful,
Yeah.
but there's a reality that's dawning in a few years, and some people are trying to figure out, hey, how can I be part of that? They're not criticizing Donald Trump, right? And that's what's uniquely different. They're not saying,
but I don't. What about JD Vance, though? How long does he go with Cruz taking these? He's clearly shooting at Vance. I mean, let's be candid. It's not Trump. Totally agree with you, Sean. If you were advising Vance, and Vance gave that speech without naming Cruz, pushing back on the idea that basically he had to weigh in the Nick Fuentes, the debate. If you're advising Vance, if you give him oxygen, it's game on.
Right.
But how long do you wait?
Look, here's the way I look at this: is if you're JD Vance, keep doing what you're doing. Everybody, I mean, his comments, we talked about this the other day, how he handled the Susie Wiles thing was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
His engagement with people, how he handled the Turning Point USA, both hosting the show and then going out and doing the live event. Fantastic. As long as Vance stays out in front, then you don't need to address what's behind you, right? I feel like, and as long as Trump is saying, you're my guy, and you keep doing what you're doing, forget the rest. Stay focused on the prize. It's only if Trump were to come out and say, Ted's got a good point and it'll be interesting. Like, now you have to figure it out. But until and unless that happens, which there's no indication that will, I would stay completely focused on doing what you're doing because it's working.
Let me ask you one thing, though. Trump's a puncher. Anytime he gets punched, he hits you back harder, right?
There's a difference. It's your point. If you get punched, and right now they're shadow boxing, they're not punching.
Okay. All right.
It's not a direct criticism, a direct hit yet at this point.
And again, veiled, look, these are the veiled thing. That's a difference. Running around shadow boxing is very different than punching someone in the face.
Quote of the day. Okay, let's go. We've got sort of a new little segment we're gonna try out today. Audience asks. So we tweeted this morning. Actually, I think it was
every morning.
And tweeted this morning asking you guys what you want to talk about. We've got a couple ideas that we're gonna pull up. Let's pull up Independent Susie in Colorado, who says pundits. She's talking to us. Discuss Trump's speech, the tasteless plaques, his Reiner tweet, as if it's just Trump being Trump. But outside MAGA, Americans are disgusted by it all. Things are bad in the real world and getting worse. Our kids can't find jobs. Prices are sky high on everything. Discuss this. And I just want to say, you know what, Susie, thank you for your question. It's not just sort of critics who are saying this. There is a op-ed in the Wall Street Journal from Karl Rove, who is making a similar warning to the president, saying that alarm bells are ringing. There's sort of a Christmas theme, not Christmas bells. Alarm bells are ringing. And he's asking, are you listening? basically going off on his online ranting and his blaming of Biden, saying that that's not going to work. Let's just, I guess, to start there. I mean, Dan, do you you feel like the president is being a bit of a Scrooge this Christmas? For those of you who haven't been following, there is, in addition to the Rob Reiner issue, where he was sort of obviously not expressing sympathies for Rob Reiner's death and making those sort of callous comments about him, there are these new plaques in the White House where the president apparently personally authored some of them, plaques that go under pictures of old presidents, and they say sort of nasty things about Democrats, Obama, Biden. People are sort of seeing this as petty. Dan, what are Democrats seeing this and looking to use this in the to launch onto this for the midterm?
So I mean, two things, because I'm seeing the chat here. So guys, every morning we're asking what topics you want us to discuss. So we're looking at it. So every day, go follow the DC Huddle account and share what you think we should be talking about. We're going to pull one from the left, one from the right. And yes, chat here on YouTube. We're also going to get to you here next. Just give us a minute. We're going to pull up your questions. Look, I agree with Susie that when Trump does this stuff, the base loves it. Our base hates it. But the average voter, we heard this all last year of 24. They don't like this side of Trump. And it used to be, if you go to the White House website and click on former presidents, there's a blurb about each person's presidency. And that president, writes their blurb when they get into office. And the tradition has always been, you don't go back and edit the last person's website, right? Because you can only imagine when the party changes hands, people are going to go back and, if they could, if you said to some die in the wool 22-year-old on your team, you write what, Donald Trump in 2021, what his thing should be, right? If you're the Biden team. Donald Trump decided that apparently, by their own admission, he personally wrote some of these, just trolls the hell out of Democrats. It's stupid. I think it's silly, but it's the side of Trump, the Reiner tweet, that middle 5-10% just says, God damn it, focus on my life.
I was going to say, the question is why is he spending time on this?
It's just embarrassing. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like a toddler.
I will say this. You're right to the extent that the base loves it and the folks on the left. It's literally the definition of trolling in the extreme. Yeah. Everybody on the left freaks out about it. I just don't think Sue from Colorado. I obviously very passionate about politics and what. I just don't think that the average person this morning is like, did you see the plaques on the colonnade between the residents and the I
don't know, man. People are on social media. That stuff, both sides. Again, the right was either like, "This is awesome,"
right,
and the left was like,
"Yes."
They're bronze plaques that say this in writing.
Right. I mean, look, here, and then the last thing I'll say is that again, it's the level of no one gave a crap what people said about Trump when he was coming up or when he left office. Right. In fact, the massive amounts of lawfare, weaponization against the idea of his companies were debanked, and no one said a damn thing about what's the dignified thing, what's the right thing to do. You call him Hitler, Nazi, no one give a crap. And now suddenly it's, oh well, he said that Biden used an auto pen. I mean, I just
but Sean, the Biden people never put on the White House website, he incited a January 6th riot. He had a call.
The president certainly. I mean, you might not have gotten it written on a plaque.
They didn't. Well, that's it, right? I mean, look, I agree with you. I get it, and it fires up both sides. I'm looking at the chat. Boy, you guys like this topic.
But here's what I'll tell you about Trump.
Sean, get them.
Yeah, exactly. Sean, you're getting a lot of kudos on here. I'll just tell you that right now.
Good. Well,
that question is the president being a Christmas Grinch, or are we being snowflakes, right?
But here's the last thing I'll say. Just about if everyone goes, oh, he did it. I early on a couple times when with then candidate Trump would ask my opinion on something, I'd say, I don't know. That's really because it's not me, right? There's certain things, and Speaker Johnson says this once in a while when he gets asked. He says, look, there's certain things about how I was brought up. He is a New York street fighter. Okay, to your point, and that's not me. And my point is that like what I learned early on with Trump is I'd say, I don't know if you need to do that. And he'd do it anyway. And I'd go, oh, this is going to end well. And then he'd be right. I mean, like there is a certain track record when it comes to Trump's gut and instinct that says, I will bet with him versus my own gut most of the time in terms of you say, how do you think this is going to play out? And I go, I've learned bet with him.
Yep. All right. Next one.
Let's take another question. A lot of questions about Nicki Minaj and Gavin Newsom, or on X specifically. Okay, here's a flyer. Nicki Minaj's big attack on Gavin Newsom may not seem significant, but for her to be so outspoken and knowing her online fan base is considered one of the most rabid, good luck running for prez while her Barb army aims its fire on you. Dan, problem for Gavin?
Well, look,
Nicki Minaj, who's got a following?
Yeah, no, I mean,
Problem for Nicki Minaj. I don't know.
Do I think Gavin Newsom, it's over and we should move on? I do not. But what I do think that it is the case now is it used to be that like almost all of Hollywood was completely liberal, and those that were more conservative or had just different points of view had to hide in the closet. Now what you have is more of a comfort level that I can kind of express it, and I'm going to have people back me up. And I think that is a difference kind of going forward, because who was the other famous woman who took a shot at the New York Times deal conference last week about Newsom, who criticized him and had a lot of people on the right kind of cheerleading? I've always said this, if you're a celebrity, you have a right to your voice. You shouldn't be ashamed. And, get in there. It's your right.
Sean, how long till she gets a White House invitation?
Well, I told you I had Mike Waltz, the UN ambassador, on my show a couple weeks ago. He had met with her over this issue of Christians being persecuted
Halle
in
Berry.
the area. And I think to Dan's point, this is bigger, not just Nicki Minaj, but this idea. You look at what Mark Wahlberg and Mario Lopez have been able to do in terms of speaking out on faith. That was something that was so taboo in Hollywood and pop culture for people to feel like they could express themselves politically or in terms of their faith. The wall is starting to crack. We saw this with Hispanics. We saw this with blacks, where suddenly they realized, hey, you know what? We can to go out there and openly support Republicans, conservatives, MAGA-leaning folks. We might not get them 100% of the time, but this is another one of those, canary in the coal mine moments where we start to see somebody like Nicki Minaj. Again, maybe it's a one-off, like it's just Nigeria and her support for Christian persecution there. But this is not good when people in whether it's music or Hollywood actors suddenly feel that they actually can, without retribution, express support for an issue or a candidate. So I actually think this is an important moment.
I'll be interested to see if it lasts, because it does seem like obviously the pendulum, when it comes to, people being proud Republicans, proud MAGA followers, proud, Trump voters, that very much has been, in vogue. And he totally changed that during 2024. But now you're starting to see the pendulum swing back, it seems a little bit. So I'm curious if these famous folks actually keep that up, or if we go back to the old everybody's liberal in Hollywood sort of thing. Let's do more questions from the chat. Question: is the 28 election the last election a true progressive can get elected with a shift to the reps in the Electoral College because of the 2030 census?
Great question. It's something that I've talked about before, that the Democrats have to think about after this 2028. We always have talked the last 20 years about the blue wall. Like if we could just hold Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Nevada, we're at 270. Well, in 2032, we will likely have to win those states plus North Carolina and Georgia just to get over 270, based on the likely shift of the population from the north to the south. These states are going to get more congressional seats, thus more Electoral College votes. Look, I think one of the things is the first question I would ask is, does the Trump coalition hold and become the Republican coalition going forward? If it does, then Democrats have to figure out what is our new coalition. If it doesn't, and the working class kind of becomes more up for grabs again, then I don't know, because the Bernie Sanders wing of the party and the MAGA wing of the Republican Party meet on the spectrum a little bit. And so could a progressive win? It's possible. If I said there was a candidate who was, for taking equity stakes and tariffs and anti-immigration, new, illegal immigrants 20 years ago, that was our party. And it turned out to be a political winner today, and it's the Republican Party. So I don't know. Politics makes strange bedfellows, but it's a great question.
Yeah, I would just say this. I love the question because, like anything else, understanding how the game is played is critical to this. Okay. And this is why I love what you asked, because so many times when I listen to cable news or anything, they're asking random pundits who are not in the game. And when we talk about the calendar or whatever, if you don't understand how the different pieces of the game, the calendar, the states, the allocation of delegates, when people opine, that's it. That's just their opinion. And so I love the question, because getting the allocation of electoral votes is critical to understanding which party can actually overcome this. And for a while, our party had a hard time of putting together that coalition to get to 270. And now it looks like the tide is shifting because of this. But mark my word right now, the Democrats are always trying to figure out how to then rig the game, right? So they want to make DC a state, not because they care about the people in DC, because they want 2 additional U.S. senators and electoral votes in the process, right? That's what they really want. Why do they? I mean, so much of what, packing the Supreme Court. Trust me when I tell you this right now, you will see in the next couple of years, because of what Dan just described, a discussion among the Democratic leadership about how to change either the allocation of the Electoral College, go to the popular vote. They're going to quickly talk about changing the rules because they're not going to win under the current ones.
Dan, any last thoughts? Democrats trying to rig everything?
No, we are not.
You're like, everyone knows
I think what you may see is following the Trump model of reading every piece of fine print, and if it things change. So we'll see what the future holds.
Let's do one more. We're at time, but let's just do one more. Question: did Trump's speech have anything to do with distracting from the Vanity Fair blowback? Good question. It was announced after, but I'm sure they were planning it for a while, right, Sean?
I will say I've been with the president where he says, "Sean, I want to do X tonight," and
and then they do it.
But I don't think that wasn't going to this was a longer response, as he said, reportedly to Susie in the pool or after the speech in that dip room, hey, you got it didn't time right. So no, I don't think it did.
It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I do think, though, on the macro, they wanted to change the subject from the last few weeks, which has been they've been defensive. It's been more on kind of Democratic issues and their own divisions. And I think they wanted to try to, get all of us talking about what they want us talking about. Not sure it succeeded.
Yeah, I'm not sure it succeeded either. All right, guys. We will be back tomorrow at 8:30. Thanks for joining. Sean, real quick, did you have something you want to flag
it's
for
Thursday.
Thursday we got the panel. This is going to be fun because obviously there's a lot of great videos and a lot of great topics, and obviously getting reaction to the speech, getting reaction I'm going to play that female Democratic senator asking the FCC commissioner about an error. And she, by the way, she calls him, she says, "Brendan Carr, you are an elected bureaucrat." And I'm like, you just said that you don't understand what the FCC does, and you don't understand how he got his job. That doesn't bode well.
Other than that, great question.
I'm sorry, which senator was it?
I'm gonna have to look. I just retweeted it. So if you want to go, it's a female. And I've got to look at what would be Senate.
We have so many of them.
Yes, I'll have to. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'm looking while he's talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rachel, when is your next newsletter? Do you know? Do you have
a question? I need to figure that out right now.
And by the way, Jack Smith was on the Hill. We talked about this. There's a lot tomorrow. We've got so much to continue to break down. So tomorrow is going to be fun.
And the president's going to Carolina tomorrow too, North Carolina. Yep.
That's right. All right, guys. We'll see you all back tomorrow at 8:30.
Yep. Go on X tomorrow if you want your questions. Put them in there.